Now to a story we have been covering a great deal at News Nation, that of the 12 missing or dead scientists. One of them was researcher Amy Eskridge, who before her reported suicide claimed she had been the victim of a directed energy attack inside her Alabama home. Directed energy weapons fire concentrated energy at the speed of light, and for years, intelligence officials working abroad have reported brain injuries known as Havana syndrome. The condition could be linked to directed energy weapons, but now there could be a domestic threat too. Our next guest has been looking extensively into these weapons and has spoken to people who say they have been injured by them. Take a look.
Have directed energy weapons been used against U.S. government personnel?
Absolutely.
Mike, you did counterintelligence work for the U.S. government. You dealt with highly classified information.
We walked in on an operation that the hostile country was doing.
So you were attacked by a hostile intelligence service.
Right.
It fundamentally disrupts the brain network.
Yes, ma'am.
All these people being injured, and you're just saying, no, it didn't really happen.
Emmy Award-winning investigative journalist Catherine Herridge joins us now. Great to see you here. Thank you so much. So you've, of course, been investigating reports of Havana syndrome, both abroad and domestically. Tell us what it is for people who aren't familiar.
Well, a directed energy attack is, in simple terms, like putting your cell phone in a microwave just for a couple of seconds. When you take it out, it looks undamaged, but in fact, the electrical networks have been completely disrupted. And what I've been able to document in my reporting is that the injuries don't stop with that initial attack, that it can be progressive. And in fact, we've documented cases of brain cell atrophy as well as brain cell death.
So this is something that was reported during the Biden administration. There are members of the CIA who said there's something wrong with them. Is there a difference now in how this is being handled versus how it was handled with the Biden administration? Is it being taken seriously at this point?
Well, just in the clip you saw, that was retired counterintelligence officer Mike Beck. He was attacked in 1996 in a hostile country, and he had to move into assisted living in his 60s because he had this Parkinson's-like syndrome. He was a classic case of the brain injury progressively getting worse. It was that story that prompted DNI Gabbard to do a new assessment of these anomalous health incidents or Havana syndrome. And one of her last acts was to recall all of the Biden-era assessments because they were defective and they were politically biased as well. And those assessments said that it was unlikely a novel weapon or a foreign adversary was responsible, and that is not backed up by the intelligence and the evidence.
So for those who say they were injured, are they able to get help with their injuries? You just mentioned he had to move into assisted living, but clearly there's damage here, brain damage.
I've spent 25 years doing a lot of accountability reporting, especially with veterans, intelligence officers, military personnel, active duty. I have never seen such a case of government cruelty in my entire career. You have people who raise their right hands to defend this country, some of the most capable and brightest people we have. And then when they get attacked and they get injured, they're told that they're crazy. It's all in their heads. And they're being gaslit on a level that I have never seen before. And there are absolutely cases where they have been denied access to health care and to treatment that would have made a difference to the progress of these injuries.
So Americans hear this and say, you know, this is horrific, but it's something that's happening overseas.
And that's not correct.
You've investigated a lot of this and you found that there are domestic attacks as well. Can you tell us more about that?
I think one of the most worrying things I'm seeing in my reporting is that it's no longer isolated to overseas. People talk about Havana syndrome in 2016. It's kind of a foreign thing. What I've been able to document in the last year as an independent journalist is multiple cases inside the United States. Earlier this year, a Space Force veteran went on the record about 5 attacks at his home in Northern Virginia, which also affected his wife. She was collateral damage. And if there's a common thread to all these cases, Katie, it's that all of them seem to have a portfolio that in some way touches Russia. And that is really the third rail in this story.
So in terms of, you know, the story about the 12 missing scientists, there's obviously, each case is different, but they all have very similar aspects to them as well. The case of Amy Eskridge, for example, she died allegedly of a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but she claimed before that she had been hit by a directed energy weapon in her home and that she experienced burns. And based on what you're telling me of people who are victims of this being told that they're crazy, there's nothing wrong with them, do you think that she maybe would have had a case?
Well, I think I would need to have more information inside of that investigation. But I think this idea that there aren't domestic attacks and that they haven't targeted civilians is just not correct. It's not borne out by the evidence. And again, the trend that I'm seeing is that the cadence of attacks inside the United States, I think, has escalated. My information is only anecdotal, but I do believe that the 4 years under the Biden administration where we said there's nothing to see here, there's no novel weapon, there's no foreign adversary, I think this was a tremendous disservice and emboldened those who are behind it.
So what kind of weapons are we talking about? Is this something that someone wears that they can walk up to your house and then walk away? Are they built into a room? I mean, how would you carry out something like this if you were a Russian asset, allegedly, or someone else who has this technology?
Well, based on my reporting, there seem to be multiple types of weapons. I think what I'll call the old school style weapon are weapons that are built into the infrastructure. Many of the people that I've spoken to say they were attacked in hotel rooms. They were essentially had their brains kind of fried overnight. I mean, that's the simple explanation. Others describe a portable device. I've spoken with people who say that they were hit at the executive office building just next to the White House here in Washington.
Wow.
Others who say it was in suburban Washington, other parts of the country. And these aren't people just talking. I authenticate and I look for receipts. In virtually all of these cases, they have receipts. They have the type of injuries that you can only see with a directed energy weapon. I have some new reporting which certainly suggests that there is another iteration of this weapon. Maybe I'll come back when I have a little bit more,
absolutely.
but
Please
I can
do.
tell you it's the most frightening element of this reporting so far because I think it will be very hard to defend against.
All right, well, Catherine Herridge, you're one of the best, and we're
Thank
grateful
you.
to have you and look forward to your reporting, although maybe a little terrified. Thank you very much. Great to see you.